is during the intro screen, just gab randomly about random things as a disembodied voice randomly. A couple of weeks ago during the intro, I just vividly AMSRly described my breakfast. Like, I have this nice crispy bacon here. That's what's really keeping me from y'all. I can't really come to the phone right. It was pretty funny.
That's awesome.
Christ, episode 5 already?
I know. It's going by fast.
Yeah, it is. It really is. I'm gonna tag you on Instagram if that's okay.
Please do.
Oh, no, that's the wrong one. Oh man, I love the alliteration on your name.
Thanks.
I'm a sucker for alliteration.
It's pretty good. I'm usually pretty bad about it, honestly. But that one was just such gold. I couldn't not do it.
Yeah, that's a... And I just don't have the hashtags anymore.
Hashtags are hard.
Okay. You know what I will say is they have made the content creation as far as social media and branding is concerned pretty straightforward these days. I love that I have to make an Instagram post and then it shares across 3 different platforms.
It's so nice.
So nice.
I just realized I wasn't following you on Instagram. I fixed that.
I think I'm following you.
I think you are.
Try to hit all my friends and all my friends' pages with the thing.
I thought I had, and I think on one of my other accounts I was following you, but not on my actual account.
Well, I'm gonna take what I can get. Sure, it looks like my title looks good. Looks like we already have some guests, some folks hanging out with us.
Indeed.
Exciting news. Quick double sound check. I was talking to X-Ray last week about how this is kind of a ragtag thrown together thing, and there's quite a few lessons that I'm learning as I go through it. One of which is to make sure you double check your sound. I did a whole 2.5 hour episode with the fish tank in the background.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Like sound is okay.
Excellent.
Oh, cool. Like sound is that. This. Gonna do the thing. All right. Are you ready? Is there anything else you need?
I'm good. I'm set.
All right, cool. Well, then I am going to introduce these disembodied voices that everybody are so eager to talk about. I'm gonna do this first. Morning, everybody. Iron Fletcher already in chat. What's up, man? Welcome to the show. I'm going to introduce our esteemed guest. I really should work on some sort of intro or some sort of like way to transition into things. Today, please everybody welcome our awesome, amazing, wonderful, talented guest, Romelia. Romelia Claymore, Cocktails and Claymore on Instagram. I'll get a link for y'all here really quick. This one. Welcome to the show. I'm so happy you're here.
I'm also very happy I'm here.
Yeah, I must say I'm very thankful to onslaught is the best word to use of my friends that jumped in and volunteered to want to be on shows, and you were one of the folks that jumped in pretty quick, right? You said
I
that
did.
here's this episode. I want to be on this episode. What was the calling for the physicality episode? What made you say, "Ooh, I want to do that"?
Well, I mean, a lot of reasons. um, but I think it's an interesting thing to talk about because there is some disconnect and some connections that can be made between like streaming or gaming or, I mean, Instagram, whatever you're doing on social media, and how you appear to others.
True.
And I find that quite fascinating as a female identifying person.
Sure.
And that's really crucial for a lot of the things that I do on social media.
Okay.
So I
Wow.
think it's fascinating to talk about.
That's a really well said. Well said. We'll put it that way. The and this is kind of where this came from too. Was a very similar place in that. There's a common misconception that if you're a person who let's just say if you're a cis female with a tank top, you're gonna automatically succeed on Twitch, right? Like that's a stereotype that's floated around the platform for some time that's just kind of not really fair, right?
Yeah.
But it's common. You see these. Um, I can't use that word anymore. God damn it! I was gonna say this word. Um,
Yeah.
but there's a huge group of folks who think that it's not their fault that they're not able to find romantic partners, and that it is just because of their physicality that they can't get the attention that they want romantically otherwise. And I feel like I see a lot of that projected onto content creators on Twitch, specifically as it relates to content creators who are physically objectively attractive and do bring that element.
Mhm.
I think that it's probably, and I'm starting off with really broad sweep statements here, I think it's probably not fair for those folks that, because they have that added aspect of their life. And there's a whole trope, there's a whole like stereotype that go through life a little bit easier. In fact, I think Mythbusters did an episode on that, and
They
and,
sure did.
and to show that it is at least somewhat true, which makes sense. But I think that a lot of folks forget about the fact that there are also associated struggles with that kind of privilege. As with many other types of privilege, just because that privilege exists doesn't
Right.
or issues. Oh my god! I put the space in the itinerary, and you.
How dare you?
How fucking dare I? So I did say I wanted to start. Oh wow, you did fucking put all these notes in here.
I tried. I'm a note taker. It's what I do.
I that is awesome. I am also, as you can tell, quite the written down person. That going to overlap pretty fucking well. So I think it's pretty clear that to start off with I like to start off with like intentions and goals and things that we're going to explore through the episode. So what are some questions that you have in regards some things that we can explore in regard.
Oh man. I mean, there's so many different avenues that you can take with this, and especially like with gaming or like nerd communities in general, it's really interesting to kind of see how different people walk through that. And I think having you and I do this is going to be an interesting, like, bouncing off ideas in this way, being presenting male, presenting female kind of
Sure.
aspect, and seeing how that interacts. And I grew up in sci-fi conventions, like as a toddler growing up, and so like bringing that into this as well, kind of seeing how some of those physicality elements work between the two, I think is fascinating to me. Um, because that's where I got a lot of my gaming is actually from sci-fi conventions, and kind of that's how I got into it. So, kind of going through that. Um, Trying to think. I had other
That's
things, and now they're leaving.
that's okay. I was having a conversation with the person last night about how sometimes it just be like that, right? Sometimes sometimes our minds just aren't ready to figure out that thought, and they just kind of carry on.
It's
Um,
true.
that's a really interesting perspective. I didn't think to bring up. Hey, Bruff, good to see you. Bruff says hi in
Hi, Brett.
chat in the most fun, adorable way ever, as Bruff
Oh my
does.
goodness, that's so cute. That's adorable.
I think that there's something to be said, and that's going to be an interesting perspective to talk about. I like that you mentioned that we have an interesting opportunity to represent um, perspectives from two different dynamics here, at least as far as physicality is concerned. That's going to be pretty cool. I didn't think about it until you just said it, that there's probably a lot that goes into growing up um, as a nerd, just as a tiny little tot nerd into like a full-fledged adult nerd, and how the struggles transition, even like evolve and introduce themselves as we get a little bit older, and how those struggles change based on your physicality. I'm gonna make some assumptions, pose as questions here, as a in an effort to get a little bit more clarity on my side of perspective from you. Right, I'm assuming that there was probably a bit of a transitional change and associated struggle with growing up as a kid to a nerd to growing up as a an adult female as a nerd, especially because if there's one thing the nerd community is not doing well, and I feel like I'm pretty confident in making this broad statement, is I don't think that they treat um, well, really anybody who's not a straight white male very well as a nerd, right? Like, not to completely jump off of the social ledge into that kind of discourse, but as it pertains to our perspectives now, being a woman and streaming, for example, has a slew of difficulties, right? What are and I'm gonna kind of bring this up a little bit later as it pertains to you, but specifically as it pertains to in streaming. Have you encountered those sweaty nerds who get on and just say stupid shit like "show me your tits" or like "I want to see your feet" or weird shit like that?
um, so with because I don't stream on Twitch a whole lot, and when I do, I'm focused on gaming, not
Okay,
so much my chat because it. I'm still working on the multitask
gotcha.
aspect. Um, but in some of my like other stuff, so like Instagram, for example, yes, all the time. Actually, just last week, I had someone DM me on Instagram being like, "Hi, I want a picture of your socks or your feet," and
Sheesh.
I was like,
Just nowhere randomly.
"Yes," out of nowhere. I was like, "I don't know you. Um, like, I don't even think you follow my page, so no."
So to be clear for the masses, is that saying? And this is just a joke. I get it that this is like directly into the trope that I'm making fun of, but the joke was gonna be: does that mean that if somebody does follow you, that the potential for feet pictures and socks does open marginally comparatively? That's ridiculous. I can't believe that somebody has the audacity to just jump in and start. I mean, let's be honest, objectifying a person like that, right? I and for perspective from my side, something that has literally never happened. I've never been. I can't say never. That's bold, but I actually think I can. I don't think I've ever been seriously outwardly objectified on a virtual platform. I mean, and we can go into the differences between us in terms of physicality, but I don't. But I think it more lends to the divide that we talked about earlier in terms of both um, I think that there's a couple different things that go into it actually. I think the first one is the clear divide between being a man and a woman when you're streaming, and B, the straight audacity of these boys, bro. Like, clearly they've been running rampant and doing whatever they want for the last hundreds of thousands of years. So now that we're starting to introduce a little bit of accountability and a little bit of calling out people who are acting idiots, especially in like DMs, for example, we're seeing a lot more, I guess, exposure to that sort of behavior,
Mm-hmm.
which is both a good. I think it's just a good thing. I think the only bad thing is that it really highlights the grossness in the world. But I think that that's sort of like a necessary evil, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's that's I cannot believe any. It's crazy that even just like a random last week. No, so you have. I mean, we'll go into this more a little bit later, also. But you
Mhm.
have more than one social media presence on Instagram, right? Was this on the
Yeah.
one that is for gaming, or is this for the one that is for different types of activities? I don't want to spoil it.
So it is for different things.
Okay, but that's not consent, right? Like that's not.
Correct. Not at all. Like, sorry, no. Yeah. So it was just interesting, and it's interesting because I do have several different Instagram accounts and different social media accounts, and to see how people interact differently based on, and a lot of times I cross post on all of my Instagrams.
Okay,
Like a lot of
sure.
my pictures show up on all of them, so it's not like I'm doing one thing on one.
That'd be a
Um,
lot of work. You're a hell of a social media manager. Like think of that resume material if you're fucking.
oh, for real. It's insane. It's hard, but yeah, and it's just interesting to see based on like what my username is called. So like cocktails and claymores, I get a whole different interaction with people that follow me than I do on some of my other
You
ones.
want to just jump out that big one now so we can talk about
Yeah,
it freely?
yeah.
I'll let you. I'll let you introduce it because that's your thing.
It is. So my other Instagram account is called Lemon Drop Burlesque. So I am actually part of a cosplay burlesque company that is run by one of my best friends. Um, and so that account, the burlesque account, which I only have like a few of like actual like burlesque photos, that's where that message came from last week, which was just like bizarre to me.
No shit. So that said, I think that's a really good segue for a question I had was, so do you think that, do you get different like messages from strangers based on the content, like you're just saying, of the Instagram? Do you still get those weird ass messages like on Twitch or Facebook, or like your Cocktails and Claymores Instagram, for example?
So on Facebook, I will every once in a while get some of those weird messages. I've mostly fixed those settings so that doesn't happen
Oh, thanks,
because
Zuck.
I don't want that on my Facebook,
Sure.
like at all. Um, on my cocktails and claymores, like I really don't get those same messages that I do on my burlesque page,
Okay.
like at all.
What about
Which is
TikTok?
TikTok. So funny enough about TikTok,
Because I
I
saw I saw
don't.
your TikTok. You're like you got like a fucking you got like a following on TikTok. You got some well, and I've spent some time scrolling through your TikTok as y'all got me addicted to that fucking app. I mean,
You're welcome.
you're good at it, right? Like they're catchy and they're funny, and like I've learned a lot about K-pop and a lot of other things just by like scrolling through. So TikTok, as you were saying, you don't. What is this in regards to TikTok?
So TikTok is interesting because I know a lot of, so on TikTok I have a lot of TikTok friends from all over the country, and they get a lot of DMs that are really weird and like have like, hey, send me your feed or whatever.
Okay,
I personally have never experienced that,
on
but I
TikTok.
will get in my comment section on TikTok
Okay,
every once in a while. Like once in a blue moon I'll get a weird one, and then I'm like, my TikTok I don't take as seriously as like my Instagrams.
okay.
So a lot of times I just kind of like comment back like lol,
Yeah,
like
just hit
LOL.
him
I'm
with
like,
the
I don't
lol.
care. Yeah, I'm like, I don't care.
How emasculating. That'll fucking teach them.
Like, I
Lol.
don't care. Yeah, exactly.
Send them back a ruler emoji and let's body shame them while we're at it, right? Like I'm normally not an advocate for that sort of behavior, but in a you started an environment, I endorse it, right? That's
Yeah.
so interesting. So have you put in any thought into that kind of disparity and what like might be causing that? Do you do what I do and stay up late at night staring at the ceiling, wondering about the different impacts of social media platforms and what you could be doing differently to get some sort of different interaction?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
And I try not to because I like sleep too much,
fair.
but I do. Um, and there's a lot of factors I think that play into the difference between social media accounts and reactions and things like that. And now that I have the burlesque page, like not that that is any way consent or an invitation or any of that, but I think a lot of people automatically just assume like, oh, you're doing burlesque. Okay, you must, do these things too.
You must be open to the idea of being all of these preconceived things that we have labeled by somebody who. Yeah,
Right.
that's absolutely um insane to me that because uh, I, as far as perspective is concerned, you know, I am part of the demographic that does typically benefit from, let's just say society, right? I'm part of the person who doesn't have to worry about getting random creepy. And I think, honestly, even if I did do any sort of burlesque post or anything that did, I guess, apparently invite what looks like consent to weirdos on the internet, but actually isn't, I still don't really feel like I'd get those posts, and that's not like a dig on me. That's not like a confidence thing. That's more of like a the precedent just hasn't been set for me to get random creepy messages. In fact, in regards to my physicality specifically, I think I can think of one, maybe I can think of one person who's ever been like, "Wow, dude, you're like beautiful," when we pop into a stream, and I'm pretty sure that that person, like, it's a one off, and I'm pretty sure that that person was just nice. And I again, that's not a dig on myself. That's just to highlight the vastly different like experiences that we could have. And I think because I have been on different the Twitch stream universe, as it were. Specifically, I in preparation for this episode, I tried to spend more time watching female streamers or female presenting streamers or whatever their pronouns might
Mm-hmm.
be. And the comment sections are just the elephant graveyard from Lion King. And these are folks who maybe like and there's YouTube videos on it. There's this entire side to gaming, which is basically look how shitty gamers are, and like it's horrifying to me that physicality in gaming has become a hot topic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially because physicality is not something that a person can change, right? In some cases, depending on the aspect that a person doesn't like about their physicality, it doesn't change. It stays that way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Now there's like a whole other thing we can go on to in terms of plastic surgery and folks working out and all that stuff, but that's for later in the show. God damn it! The point is that in terms of folks being treated like objects or objectified on the platform, like that's clearly a common issue in not even just Twitch, but nerddom in general, right?
Mm-hmm.
So have you experienced that sort of struggle outside of digital platform? Well,
Oh yes. Oh yes.
because you
Um,
LARPed too, right? Like you
yeah.
play. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Um, and it's like it's just interesting. And from my perspective, so I was a competitive figure skater for 14 years of my
Holy shit! I
life.
didn't know that. How did I not know? Fucking
I don't
awesome.
know. Now you know.
I think
Um,
is that why you is so can you sachet in figure skating? Is that how you knew that and why you taught me that? For those of
no,
you who don't know, Romelia taught me how to sachet. Do you want to see? I think I still know how to do it.
you should hopefully.
Okay. Do you want to see?
Yes,
Can you see the screen?
I can
Okay. Well, and while I'm up, I'm gonna grab coffee too. I'll ask you a
do
question.
it.
I'm gonna leave you unattended with chat. I hope you can handle
Oh
that
no.
responsibility. I think you can, right? Like I know who you are. Ready?
Right, ready.
So you have to.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
I missed
There
a step.
it
Did I
is.
miss a step?
No, that was perfect.
Thank you. Sorry to side rail there. So anyway, I'm sorry. You were a competitive figure skater for 14 years.
Yes. Um, and so that was from when I was 7 to like
Math
I
dictates
started. I
101.
start. Yeah. I was like, I don't know. Math is hard. But anyway, and so growing up in the nerd community as well as being a figure skater, which also has a lot of you have to be pretty,
Okay.
essentially.
Okay. That's a requirement for being a figure skater. Is you must also be like physically attractive.
Pretty much.
Okay.
Like unfortunately, like it also is a how do I say this, rich white person sport,
Okay.
generally speaking. Um, But so I was extremely skinny, um, also. So like that also played into it.
Sure.
Um, so like there was a lot of things going into like when I would go to cons and things like that, where as I got older, I started watching people more and more like stare at me
Okay.
or look at me, and I wasn't necessarily like cosplaying or whatever. It was a different level of like people watching me at that point.
Okay. So and it felt like they were like specifically judging not only your ability in figure skating but also your physicality as
Right.
I
And
see.
being, you know, physically attractive at like a convention. So when I was like dressed up, and usually I didn't cosplay a whole lot, honestly, like I should have. But I did a lot of like Harry Potter stuff, and I would notice people watch me. Or the one time I went to an anime convention and I dressed up as Team Rocket and I had a short black skirt on,
As they do.
as they do, and that was highly uncomfortable, actually, walking around and having adult men like kind of stare, and that was really strange for me.
And you were young, you're saying, while you were cosplaying, which would
Yeah.
which would and now to be clear, not that I have a whole lot of experience with the subject, but I'm gonna, from what experience I do have, go ahead and boldly state that having men just stare at you is uncomfortable in and of itself, right? Like, and it's something that you can, I assume. Please correct me if I'm. It's something that you can probably physically feel. I've seen folks have a physical uncomfortable reaction to the attention of a person's feel like that's a pretty easy jump to say that that kind of attention makes a person feel comfortable. Just stop bold right there, but also to have that uncomfortability and child, that's probably an extra layer of it. So would you say that that kind of interaction in terms of being objectified by shitty dudes, do you think that that played a big part in your wantingness to be a part of nerddoms or your favorite fandoms or like the things that you love as it relates to, let's just say, because of the topic, gaming? For did you did you sometimes feel pushed away from game kind of interaction that
Yes. And I say that with a kind of not necessarily like a caveat to it, but it so for example, today when I was putting on my makeup this morning, like first of all, I just like wearing makeup for myself,
you? Sure.
but I also knew I was going to be on stream. And so like that is a conscious decision of like, hey, I should probably put makeup on so I don't look like a ragged mess and have people be like, "Are you sick?" Which is something that happens.
Really?
Mhm. Like I've walked into work now years ago because I work from home now. But if I didn't wear makeup, people were like, "Are you feeling okay? Are you sick?" And I'm like, "Nope, just not wearing makeup."
Wow.
Like,
So,
and
so,
that is a thing.
so like, and I mean, this is pretty well known to anybody who is good at active listening and has anybody female in their life. But like that, so physicality plays not just a part in life in terms of gaming, but in everyday life. Like you just said, you can't not put on makeup and have people like actually be worried about you. That's got to be so frustrating to feel tied your sense of what's the word? In the eyes of the people around you. Apparently, you are this person is defined by this physical image, and if you're not that physical image, then you're somehow off or different. Like that's got to be quite the obtrusive shackle. Band name called it. Um, that's super crazy. And this is a good example of when we talked about earlier, like folks who are beautiful or like physically attractive. Like, sure, MythBusters did a whole episode about how life can be them in a lot of different ways, in predefined scientific ways. MythBusters has shown that there's a non-zero impact, but I think that and like we talked about earlier, I think that we need to get a little bit more perspective on the side of folks who deal with this from day because as you're highlighting now, there are struggles. And sure, they're not at the level of like, oh my god, I can't ever find love struggles, but that they're not non-zero struggles. There's still issues that impact you emotionally and issues that impact you physically. So because I can only imagine, and again another assumption here, I can only imagine that if you feel that way when a person notices immediately if you're not wearing makeup, something more permanent and harder to change, say for instance your body type, or of just for an example, like if something like that changes, it's probably a lot more anxiety, and especially when like folks comment on it, I'd imagine. That's
Oh
sorry, that was
yes.
a weird way to word a question.
A little bit, but that's okay. I think I know where you're going.
Thanks, buddy.
Um, I think like it, yeah. And the good news is like I get for me only personally, like I can't talk for everybody else, but I can usually, and I say usually, can like pull myself out and not care what other people perceive. Like there's a lot of times where I just go out to like the grocery store. I don't put makeup on. I don't care. Like
Cause fuck them strangers.
pretty much, like I don't care. And most of the time, people aren't gonna say anything anyway in public. And if they do,
Sure.
I'll just be like, no, like I don't care. Okay, bye.
Hello,
Like I'm
stranger.
gonna go
Go fuck
shop.
yourself.
Yeah, I'm gonna go shop now. Bye.
Okay.
Um, but like it does come down to it, like I said, I was a figure skater for so long, so I was very very skinny for a long time of my life. And like when I mean skinny, I mean like 100 pounds, like 105 skinny.
Yeah,
Like
like figure skater skinny. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And so now that I don't do that and I don't work out like I should, but whatever.
Well,
um
we'll come back to that.
yeah, right. I weigh quite a bit more than I ever have in my life. And so that also plays a role in how I perceive myself and how I want to come across. So, like, I'm actually super conscious of like how I don't do this in the camera because
One
I
more time. Oh,
like pull
oh,
my
the
head
the
back.
chins. I have the chins. Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't
But
every human have that? Like, I'm not
I
trying to
no,
diminuize
yeah.
your struggle, but like, I got
Yeah.
that for sure.
Oh, yeah. It's just like a
Okay,
conscious thing where I
that's a good
like try to
example.
watch my jawline.
Okay, just like how you're presenting at any given moment, and like, okay, well, that's part of that's a really good point too, in an unrelated topic, which is the way that we perceive ourselves and the people perceive us while we're creating content, for example, and how much thought goes into that behind the scenes. But so I guess to make sure to demonstrate a working understanding of what you're saying that there's not only changes to your body that happen that make you more self-conscious in your day-to-day interactions, but there are also like micro expressions or small mannerisms that you try to avoid, and to the same effort, to the same degree, that like for instance in a conversation, even if you weren't streaming, I imagine in a conversation some of these thoughts still go through your mind, right? Like, hey, don't well, and I've known you for a hot minute now. That's like the yikes expression where you throw your head back is something that you make pretty often, right? So,
Uh-huh.
like every time that you have the thought yikes and then do that, do you immediately feel self conscious about it afterwards? If that's something you're conscious about.
Sometimes it's if I'm conscious about it, like when I'm around people that I know and like I know don't care, it honestly doesn't bother me. I'll
Well,
make
that's good.
ugly faces all day long.
Sure, same.
Like it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Uh, but yeah, like streaming because you know that they're strangers, and at the same time as I don't care, but I do care, and it's that kind of back and forth. That's a real big struggle when streaming
Okay.
for me.
So to embolden this thought, to broaden it a little bit, so would you say that it's safe to infer that one of the struggles that folks who have been classically objectified as physically attractive struggle with in terms of content creation is that to elaborate, do we think that the issue that content creators face, specifically those that are attractive, is that specifically they're not sure if folks are watching the content because they like the content or because they just like what they think is the eye candy on. I think that like that's one of the unseen struggles of content creators who are beautiful. I'll give you an example. There's a WoW streamer. His name is Zaryu. It's an X. You know, the X's that sounds like Z's kind of drive me crazy. I'm just gonna be honest.
Mhm.
Like, I think it's cool. Who doesn't want an X in their fucking gamer tag? But at the same time, my caveman brain can't comprehend that. It's a cool name, but like, I need some practice. So the
Yep.
point is this streamer, dude, this guy is smoking. Immediately objectify him and become a bit of a hypocrite. So I watched his stream. Not for that reason because he's a hell of a fire mage and I'm on a super wow kick. But while I was there, there was even him. There were folks that were like saying, "Hey, show me your abs." And if you pop on this guy's Instagram, right, like he's
Mhm.
not a stranger to the ab picture. But like we talked about earlier, showing one person expressing themselves specifically physically is not consent for a person to barrage them and then berate them if they don't get their way, which is a super common tactic. But his stream, as I digress a little bit, was full of folks saying, "Hey, show me your abs, show me your abs," and I was like, "Holy shit, mate!" Because honestly, from what I've seen, especially in the research I've been doing the last couple of weeks, is not that doesn't happen even to the classically attractive male streamers. That kind of thing doesn't happen as much as it does to female streamers or and I can say female YouTubers and female TikTokers. In comment sections everywhere, there are men just being dogs, right? And here's the shitty thing is that as a man, as a white man, I don't want it to be true that white men suck balls, just or like generally speaking, right? Like they're and not suck balls in the fun way, like suck balls like in the terrible way. They suck. They just suck. I don't want that to be true as part of that demographic. But in my own independent studies, just doing a little bit of research, like I don't really get that choice. I can represent the type of person I want to be and I want to be represented all I want, but the large majority of people out there saying stupid shit in comment sections are white dudes. And a funny coincidence, it's white dudes whose content is mostly them sitting in the cab of a truck with a fucking camo hat on talking stupid. Right? So like I it blows my mind how physicality specifically impacts content creation to such a degree that there needs to be an entire thought process put into it. I'm sure that it's part of the preparation of these folks' streams. I'm sure that they have to have these meetings with their mods. I'm sure that they have to, in other ways, moderate their content to exclude, I guess, to summarize it to one word, the objectification they get from outside of their channel and their current community. So, like, that's one big struggle to highlight in terms of physicality in gaming is sure, like, to give that immediate example, a lot of folks say that if you stream on Twitch, and we kind of touched on it briefly earlier, this is a way to come back to it. That if you stream on Twitch and you're a female presenting person and you show like a little bit of titty, that you're going to just skyrocket on Twitch. And whereas that might be somewhat true in terms of mathematically, there are going to be numbers in your stream, and a lot of those people are going to be there because of those big old titties. Um, that's not going to be a quality community that you want to return to your stream and come back every day, right? And don't get me wrong, there, like for instance, you mentioned that the company that you work for is a cosplay burlesque company. I mean, there is a lot of intersectionality between sexuality and gaming as it pertains to a cosplay burlesque company. Um, Again, this is another spot to highlight it that kind of content is not consent to be fucking weirdo. But it is to say that that content is created to at least be somewhat consumed um, by folks who, hey, look at this thing that I made. Hey, appreciate my body and all of this hard work that I'm putting into showing you my body in these fun, witty ways, right?
Mhm.
Which you know is we could probably do a whole other episode on how valid that individuality and how valid that kind of expression of oneself is. But in
Mhm.
terms of physicality in gaming, which is today's topic, like there's even in situations where folks create content that is consumed in an objectifying way for the consumer, it doesn't necessarily mean that those people want comment sections full of people saying "step on me."
It's true. It's true.
Well, I'm glad. Thank you for confirming that for me, as I'm not a person who creates that content, and probably won't be for. I could comfortably say at least some time, right? Don't get me wrong. I definitely have the same tendencies, and it looks fun. Have you heard of the? I think you actually your household might be the people that introduced you to this, but the Hawkeye initiative, all over. I think it's
Oh
Tumblr
yes,
or
yes.
okay. Ever since somebody, I don't remember who, so if it's you, I'm sorry, showed me the
It wasn't
Hawkeye
me.
Initiative. That's not something I'm going to Google. The show, one of the formats of the show I like to do is something that I'm curious about or want to show to everybody. I Google it on screen for everybody, but the Hawkeye Initiative is not going to be one of those things. For obvious reasons, right? You know what it is. So, for those of you who don't know in chat, the Hawkeye Initiative is basically, folks really wanted to highlight the fact that in comic books specifically, and please correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, but in comic books specifically, women are often shown in suggestive and vulnerable positions to create an appeal to another human's sexuality as a way to kind of introduce a hook to that content. Well, so what the Hawkeye Initiative does is, in a true, I want to say, feminist move, it attempts to equalize the field by taking a beloved character and putting him in those poses. So what folks will often do is they'll find a comic book frame of a woman who's in a suggestive pose or put into circumstances beyond their control to create that sort of sexual tension, and instead they just create Hawkeye in that pose. Which, as a fan of Hawkeye, if I were any more insecure in my masculinity, I'd be like, no, not Hawkeye. But it's quite the opposite, actually, right? Like, I am pumped that my favorite hero is getting such exposure, and such exposure in a fun way. Like, think about the cosplay opportunities that creates for me, right? Yeah, for those of you who don't know, that's the fucking that is the um, Hawkeye Initiative. So if you want to do your own independent studies on that, it's a good example of how like physicality and sexuality lends into gaming or nerddoms in general. I know that Hawkeye is traditionally a comic book character, but bitch, there's video games with Hawkeye in it. Okay, good God. So that's a really good point. As to digress a whole lot here. That happens on the show, as I'm sure you're aware. You've had a conversation with me for how I kind of go off on tangents sometimes, but that's a really good to crawl back down the spider web, to use X-Ray's example. That's a really good example of how um, physicality impacts content creation and lends itself to the struggles of content creators. Where there already were struggles, there are now additional struggles. One thing I can't help but get out of the back of my mind, every time I've been in the room with a beautiful person, because I know so many, every time I've been in the room with a beautiful person and that beautiful person is talking about the struggles that are related to that beauty, they almost immediately get shot down by other folks in there, right? Like, have you seen that, to where they're like, "Oh, shut up, you're pretty, so your struggles aren't real struggles"? Like, have you ever seen something like that happen in the wild?
In the wild. Um, I'm trying to think. Like I know it happens, and I'm probably have seen it. I'm just trying to think of like an actual
Examples.
time. Um, and nothing is coming to mind because, of course, it's not. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think. There was this TikTok I saw, going back to TikTok, a long time ago now, and it was a girl, and I think she was a streamer or a gamer, like YouTube gaming or something, and she was talking about some of the comments that she gets.
Okay.
And I think she was trying to talk about like some issue that was going on, like a social issue. And I think one of her commenters had said like, "You don't get to talk about this," or like it was something along those lines. And it was like a weird thing. And she was like, "I don't what? Like, why can't I talk about this?" And of course, like on TikTok, most people don't like respond back
Sure.
because it's
Because
just
it's a
not.
one and done. Let me drop my hateful comment and continue on with my scrolling.
Yep. Um, and that was like the most recent thing I can think of along those lines.
Okay.
So
Well, I mean,
yeah,
and it is too, right? Because so I've been to use your example, I've seen folks who are talking about the struggles that folks face who like don't, for instance, have a face cam on Twitch because they're self conscious of look, and the conversations are held by folks who objectively are just gorgeous. And I've seen comments that do say, "Hey, listen, you can't talk about this because you're beautiful. You don't understand what the struggle is like." Uh, I I felt like that was pretty shitty to say to a person. To say a person was saying, "Hey, here's my perspective on how you might be feeling, even though this is something that I'm not experiencing. please share with me how this is right or wrong so I can educate. And for a person to come in and just bulldoze him and say, you can't talk about that because you don't experience the struggle, like that feels pretty marginalizing, doesn't it? That feels like pretty shitty to tell a person that they're not allowed to understand somebody else's struggle from that person's side of view because they don't also experience that.
Hmm.
So that being said, what do you think causes all of this? Do you think it's just primal humanism that causes this over sexualization of really just everything? Do you think what do you think causes such an importance on physicality specifically as it relates to games? Actually, before, because that's a big question, we have a lot to unpack there. Can I go grab some coffee real quick? As I
Yes,
meant to
please do.
do that before the intro. Do you want to like? Do you want to grab anything? Or I made coffee, and as part of the intro, I was like, "Man, I'm really gonna get some coffee." And then, as it happens, when I get into conversations with my friends, I just forgot all about that shit. Right?
Yep.
It's gonna take me 10 seconds because it's right there. So I'll be right back.
No worries.
Oh, this stream not sponsored, but definitely brought to you by Mr. Coffee. You want a coffee maker for $11? Coffee. You want to spill coffee all over your hardwood as you reckless gaming desk? Coffee can make sure that happens for you. Don't forget to purchase your additional modular refillable filter. Hi, thank you for letting me go and grab some coffee, even though I've made a downright mess. So the question was, why the fuck do we put such an importance on physicality, specifically as it relates to gaming? Because to come back to what we said earlier, there is a correlation between higher Twitch numbers and beautiful, and Mythbusters saying that some things are easier. Why?
I mean, there's probably a lot of reasons why. I think a lot of social media, and like media in general, that's just something that has been perpetualized since, I mean, forever. Like
True.
in like magazines, on television, like those kinds of things. And so we grow up seeing all of that, and we just grow up seeing these beautiful people that are doing great things or whatever, all
True.
of those things. And I think it's just something that we kind of have, like, not inherent. That's not the word I want to use. It's just ingrained in us from being
Human
small. Yeah,
humanisms.
and
So
kind of.
Sigmund Freud might be the answer to that question.
Oh, Freud. Oh, Freud.
Problematic in so many different ways. Well, that's a good point, and I think something it's a good station to stop the train at to take a look at a little bit because folks in chat are bringing up a lot of really good points too, right? Nanners, hi by the way, says we assume beautiful people don't go through the same struggles because they're so desirable. We can't actually actualize the idea that they're human beings. And to elaborate more on the human beings part, it's that they experience struggles in way, right? So, Fellowship of Boston, that's y'all, right? Says the thing about privileged identities, like attractive folks, it's not to say that they don't have struggles. Everyone has struggles, but it's important to not draw parallels between the struggles of a privileged identity and those of a disadvantaged ability, like poor white folks comparing the struggles of poor black folks. While both are valid, they're not equal. Yeah, well, and that's what we're talking about, right? Is that specifically, I think it's shitty when a person is, and maybe not necessarily drawing parallels between their struggles and another person's struggles, but more reaching out in an effort to understand another person's struggles, even though it's a struggle that they might not actually face themselves. To use your example, if a poor white person is reaching out and saying, "Hey, these are the struggles that I'm facing. How are those similar to the struggles that you're facing? Or how are those different to the struggles that you're facing?" In an effort to reach out and gain perspective, I think that there's a lot of folks who jump down those people's throats without actually answering the question. And I think that specifically as it pertains to physicality, attractiveness, an example, does do a good job at creating a bigger divide between classically beautiful, not classically, and in that there almost feels like there's a an obstacle to connection between, right? Like, well, to come back to what you said, it's ingrained into us from a very young age that human beauty standards, right, which change country to country, as is well known. Why don't we? That's actually good. A good thing we can. I'm gonna switch us over here to screen capture, and we're going to say, oh, let's see what the default trending searches are. Real Haru. Seventh Day Adventist kidnapped. Do you know what that is?
Nope.
Sony
No idea.
place restock cryptocurrency, Kentucky flamethrower. So that person did not think they were going viral when they went out to do their fucking driveway, right? Now they're just everywhere. Tony Rice guitar here. This is some interesting trending searches. So what we're gonna search is beauty standards around the world. As you can rate, awesome says if it's the only struggles you're interested in learning about, there are ones you can relate to. It's also problematic. There tends to be one upperism in these conversations. Oh, that's true. I do see that quite a bit. That's a good point. So let's find us a reputable source here. I'm pretty sure that's going to be here. This one says what being beautiful means in 25 countries around the world. Have you ever been to the website indie100.com? Me either.
Nope.
Let's venture. From the Independent. Okay, so we already know what kind of news we're working on here. So, but it says, but the point of this article, just scrolling through it, is kind of just going into what we were saying, and that these are some ideas of what make people beautiful around the country. So let's just do a quick scroll by to see exactly how different folks are. Okay, and like how similar they are. Okay, so. Oh, I see. It's the same person, but they're changing it based on where. Well, and as you can see, there are like, just to scroll through it quickly, there are different like physical attributes that they're changing based on a certain person. But one thing I want to notice is that they're only doing headshots, right? And it's of one person. And I kind of sped read through each of these um, captions here, and none of them address the fact that there's not a body type change in physicality here, right? Like, it's just one person's body type, and here are what their makeup standards are, which is its own conversation. I think, like we talked about earlier, makeup's pretty cool and does a lot for a human being, but it's not necessarily what we're currently talking about. Here, let's do the slice.ca. Canadians, let's see if you're a little bit more. So this one's a little bit different in that it does showcase, I mean, it doesn't do the same thing, right? They're talking about things. So this is definitely a little bit more varied though, right? But definitely like a hot buzz, hot. I feel like they're all like buzz titles. These are all like as written by people who want you just to click on this article just for the click and then scroll off when you have 6 ads. But we've already gotten paid for those ads, so we don't care what you do. All right, Slice, maybe next time. The point is that in my travels, in my talking to folks, I've definitely experienced conversations with people who have different standards of beauty than what the normal are, right? And in fact, I would even go so far as to say that every time I talk to folks, how many times have you talked to a person? They're like, well, I'm not shallow, or looks don't matter to me. It's more about personality, or I don't care. But also, if you look at that person's dating pool, that's not necessary. And not to bash on that person, but so specifically what I'm trying to highlight is the stigma behind having a physical preference as it relates to physicality, because of what we talked about earlier in terms of there being a struggle between folks who find themselves beautiful and folks who don't find themselves beautiful, and connecting between the two, right? I don't know about you, but anytime I've heard a person say, I care about the looks of another person, I want them to be to meet this standard of beauty that I have in my head. Oftentimes, those people are kind of, and are, but they're labeled as dicks or jerks. I mean, and oftentimes they are. also dicks or jerks, but inherently that I don't think is what makes them a dick. What do you think? Do you think that a person having a preference in terms of physicality is a bad thing? Do you think that it's necessarily a negative experience to succumb to that the way that we were reared, like you mentioned earlier, in terms of physicality?
There's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
Uh, like, I don't even know where to start. Like, I think it becomes really problematic when someone it tries to force what their ideal like type or whatever is onto a person.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if they say like you need to lose 40 pounds or I'm leaving, like giving an ultimatum or something like that. I think that in lies a huge problem. And a lot of times like strangers on the internet will comment to, gamers like maybe you should work out more, like
Yeah.
even for skinny like really skinny people, like hey, go eat a cheeseburger.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and I think there's a lot of like differing things that can be talked about there, and like there's no easy answer, and
Right.
there
Well,
will
and if
be.
if there was, I think that we probably wouldn't have a whole ass talk show block
Right.
set aside for it, right? Like, I think that the easy answer that's not as easily attainable as it is to say out loud is people just stop being dicks to each other. But I want to circle back around to the example where, so let's say let's build a situation in our head, right? So you said in a situation where somebody says, "Hey, you have to lose 40 pounds." I think you said the number is really relevant. Or I'm leaving. So in a case, so how would that person effectively communicate to their partner that they're no longer physically attracted to them, but they want to be physically attracted to them without creating that ultimatum? Because and that said, do you think that that person has any right to express that sort of discomfort with where things are? Meaning the person who asked the other person to lose weight. Do you think that they have any right to do that? And moreover, do you think that they have any right to feel the way that they do, or do you think that they should not succumb to the standards set to us by, for example?
Well, I mean, we should always be skeptical of like those things that we've been taught. I think it comes down to depending on your communication style, but like having like a healthy conversation between the two. And it's, and you can express like how you feel, but you also don't get to control how that other person reacts to how you have said something. And, just trying to have a healthy conversation of just saying like, hi, um, you know, this is how I'm feeling. And unfortunately, this is what's going on. This is what I'm seeing. Is there a way that we can change this? And then if the other person is saying like, no, I'm really happy, like
With how I
with my
look and who I am,
with
and
how
I
right.
see.
And like, and that can be a conversation, and it just needs to come down to being willing to just say, here's how I feel, but then not having an expectation that they're going to feel the exact same as you.
Or that they're gonna like embrace what you said in the way that you feel significant. Okay, so you're saying that with the situation that we built, and the example that you gave us in terms of, hey, you need to lose 40 pounds or I'm leaving immediately, the problem is not necessarily the lose 40 pounds, it's the way that they communicated their dissatisfaction with the situation. Not, and the creation of an ultimatum as a tool to get what they want instead of communicating and allowing another person to make a choice. Which, if, in regards to everything that I know about love and the stuff that we've researched about love, I think that that builds a bit more of a genuine kind of bond with the person. If you say, "Hey, here's a problem I'm facing," and if another person chooses to say, "Hey, I see you, and here's the way that I can solve that problem," like that feels really good when you're like, "Hey, person, here's a problem that you can uniquely help with. What do you think?" And like, and in converse, uh, that feels like the right word. In opposite, it feels really shitty when a person tells you, "Hey, I hear you, but I don't care enough. Like, I'm not gonna solve that problem. I'm happy with the way things are." It's really hard not to like internalize that. Also, which is a whole other episode. I love episode 2 coming to you on a Valentine's Day near you. The That's true. That's actually happening. That was just a very the but the point is, so you're saying that it's not inherently it's not inherently a bad thing to have preferences, specifically as it relates to reality, but it is important to make sure that you communicate those preferences in a non-destructive way.
I mean, yeah, if you can
Okay.
be as non-destructive as possible to somebody else, like going back to what you said, like just don't be a dick.
Yeah.
Like that should be that easy, but it's not. But like it's hard to say. And this is also coming from someone who's like super demisexual, so like physical attractiveness is not the first thing that I see about a person.
Okay. But
Um
we'll come
and
back
so
to
like
that
it's harder for
question.
me to like talk about like that physical
Like appeal, draw.
yeah. So it's a
So
little harder for me.
so I'm going to admit some ignorance here. Please elaborate more if you are comfortable doing on when you say you're demisexual, but the physical attractiveness of a person isn't like what draws you to a person. I don't remember the exact words, but so can you explain to me more about what physicality means in relation to being a person demisexual?
Okay. So and demisexual to me looks different than probably someone else who identifies as demisexual
Oh,
also.
okay, good
So
point.
I will say that so
Good
because
point.
it's all kind of on
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. So that's a really good point.
yeah. So for me, um, I draw more on you know how long have I known you? Um, what is our relationship like? Do I feel comfortable with you after it's
Is this how you build romantic feelings for a person, or how you
yes.
build attraction for a person, or both?
So I mean, a little bit of both.
Okay.
Again, like for me personally, like physical, like attraction is like my lowest thing.
Okay.
Um, I'm more concerned about, you know, do you make me laugh? Do you make me smile? Can you hold me when I'm crying? Like, can we have deep, weird philosophical conversations? Can we do just like sit and do nothing? Can we play like games together? Like
Okay.
things like that. Like more of those things
I
rather than
see.
physical intimacy.
Sure, sure, sure. So, in terms of physicality as it relates to you as a person and what we're kind of talking about, is that so it does it's not like a non-zero factor though, right? Like physicality is something that as at least a small factor, or is it like not at all? like like physicality in a person, because I know that that's like a really tricky bridge to walk over, because it's easy to say, at least for me, I've been in situations where I'm like, well, if a person's um a physical representation of the soul that's in their body does not matter to me. I don't care what they look like. But then there's been situations where I'm like, I couldn't make it work with that person because of the way that they look. So I'm personally just kind of confused, like, on how that works for me, and just kind of wondering if other people experience a similar kind of struggle pull, right?
And I mean, I'm sure there are, like, because everyone is different in how they see other people, and like, I can look at like an actor or an actress and be like, yes, they're attractive. Like,
Like
like I
objectively.
know, like, yeah, I know that or whatever. But it's a different thing where I've noticed with other, like, some other people that are like immediately like attracted to them for that attractiveness. I don't do that.
Interesting. Okay. That
At
makes a
least
lot.
like generally.
Sure, sure.
And so, you know, I
Sure. No,
there's
that makes.
times where I'm like, I just don't understand.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and first of all, thanks for being willing to share that. I know that we got kind of a little personal there, but that helps in terms of relating it back to gaming, specifically as we're talking about content creation, because what what we're seeing is that there's a whole demographic of folks out there. We know the demographic, um, And um, have you seen the joke where it was anytime we see somebody doing some real stupid shit in the news, and then it's just a picture of Betty White?
No.
I fucking love that. So now every time I say there's a demographic of folks out there, and I'm about to say something shitty afterwards, I always just see a picture of Betty White in my struggle. So the point is that there's clearly a whole other demographic of folks out there as it relates to content creators, meaning their audience, who apparently are at least immediately physically attracted to a person, so much so that in your own example, somebody asked you, had the audacity to ask you for pictures of your feet. And I can only use my understanding of the universe, but me personally would be horrified to send somebody a message that fucking obtuse, right? Like I couldn't even if I was like severely interested in seeing a picture of that person's feet, I could not overcome the anxiety inside of myself to send a message, let alone the anxiety that it creates knowing the impact I'm going to have on another person, specifically as it relates to the frequency that probably happens to that person, right? Like if it made me feel that way, I'm just a jelly bean in a bag, bro. Like the whole package probably feels the same fucking way. Move on. Scroll on. So the fact that folks not only are in the audience that are able to be immediately attracted to a person, but so much so that they overcome a societal expectations, right? At this point, like we expect you to be a better human being. It's 2020. We've had enough of this shit. Like grow the fuck up. Um, but not only are they gonna overcome their own, they're gonna do what it takes to overcome those expectations, but also they're going to like, do they not have the question side themselves? Should I not be doing this stupid bitch stuff? Like, so clearly there's a demographic of folks, like I said, who are instantly attracted to folks, even so that they have to do dumb shit because of it. But I'm kind of with you in that kind of thing builds for me. And of course, I'm in the same boat where I've seen somebody who is basically paid to be attractive. But then I don't know. I find myself also wondering what those person's struggles are, both because they're attractive and because they're not attractive. Like because they're rich, for example, right? Like you have a you have a problem relating anybody on a vulnerable level because everybody might be trying to take advantage of your wallet, for example, right? Or like for beautiful people, this entire show is a really good example of like what some of those struggles are in terms of having folks reach out and ask you for pictures of your. What the fuck? You know, we know what we should do. We should build a stock library of images to send to people who are being weirdos on the internet, right? We're going to start a website and we're going to call it sendemthis.com. And it's just going to be like Imager. Is that how you say that? Imager?
I sure. I
I'm
have no
really
idea.
relying on your hip internet knowledge here. Okay, all right. The so we're gonna build a website. This probably already exists, and if not, one of y'all in chat, you can have it. Just give me like a stream link somewhere to the show. Um, it's send them this, and it's gonna be a collection of stock free images. So that means we need a photographer if anybody wants to be a photographer of stock free images that we can send to weirdos on the internet when they ask them to send us various images of our body parts. Let's Google that. Let's see if that fucking exists. I'm almost hesitant to. We got to turn on Google Safe Search if we're gonna. Is that still a thing? Is there like a safe search option? There's not. Okay. Uh, send them this. There's not. I mean, not in those words, right? Okay. But wouldn't that not be an entertaining website? And then so folks from all over can take pictures of hopefully not explicit alternatives to send to folks who are asking for explicit content, right? Like just immediate example. You know what I would send if somebody says, "Hey, send me pictures of your feet." I would send them pictures of my dog's feet, really zoomed in, like. And you know how you like put the thumb in between the nails so it like shows their web and it gets all webby and you're like, I'll send them that. Or you know what? Better yet, I'll take the dog for a really long walk through a really muddy field and then I'll take a picture of the bottom of his fucking paw, like all mud and congealed in the shell. Be like, send him this. Um, that would be so much fucking fun to create just a whole ass database of shit to send to creepers instead. If I don't know about you, but if there's one thing that I like To steal a word from Nanners in chat, it's the malicious compliance aspect to things. Somebody asks you to do something and you do the thing, but you do the thing that makes them wish they didn't ask you to do the thing. Um,
Yeah.
Thank you for going down that little rabbit hole with me. That's fun. I think I might actually write that down. That does sound fun, but I think I need to think of more examples. Send them this instead. Um, that would be fun. You know what we could do? We'll just make it a hashtag on Twitter. So here's the deal: if you're in chat, are you on Twitter?
I am.
Okay. Here's if you're in chat and you have a good idea for what you would send them instead of sending them feet pictures, and if that makes you uncomfortable because we keep using that as a reference point, let me know and we'll stop. But if y'all have a good idea uh, of what you would send somebody instead of feet pictures if they asked you for feet pictures, send it to me on Twitter at Bowborne, commonly spelt. It's spelled the same way everywhere. Send me a picture of what you would send them with the hashtag send them this instead. Let's see if somebody asked me, we're gonna jump down this rabbit hole fully here. If somebody asked me for pictures, what do you think? What would somebody ask me for pictures of? I mean, because I don't show my feet that often. Ears. Oh my god. Someone says show because I do have like cute little button ears, right? Send them this. What would I send them instead? What can you think? So here's where it gets really tricky because we want to think of an image that makes them regret asking the question without body shaming it. Right? Like let's not pull open any other. Oh my God, Nanners, what a genius! Yeah.
Oh, that is
Let's do
smart.
this. Gross ear of corn. I almost don't. Oh look, here's the settings button. Please hide explicit results. Yes, images. Oh, here we go. Ears. Oh, that's such a genius. Oh, this one's a little strange growth on ear of corn. That makes me feel a little weirded out. Maybe I'll send
Oh,
them that.
ew.
Gross. Close it. Yuck. Oh, this one's all moldy. Okay. Why? Why, Bo? Why did we do this? Romelia, why did you let us do this?
That
Poor
was all you.
Springton. It was. I have to take responsibility for my actions. You know, the worst part is I changed the scene on OBS to be our faces because I don't want to subject anybody else to this. But like an idiot, I didn't close the fucking Chrome tab, so I look over and they're still fucking there. Ah! Anyway, hashtag send them this on Twitter. Minecraft feet. Oh, that's clever, Rad. Send them Minecraft feet, cause they're a creeper. That's funny. Now I suffer alone. I'm not truly alone. The send them this hashtag. Send them this. That would be hilarious. So to come back to kind of what we were talking about a little bit. That was a fun little rabbit hole. We got things to talk about. A gross. It's still there. Gross ear of corn. Just close that tab. Gross. So what do you think we can do about it? What are some of the ways that we're going to combat the over objectification of content creators specifically? Or you know what? I want to encapsulate this because I know that the title is physicality in gaming, but cosplay is a huge part of gaming, and cosplay is not just of gaming. Obviously, there's cosplay, so many different things, but it does. But there is a lot of cosplay of gaming. So I think that when we say physicality in gaming, we can talk about cosplay. What are some things that we do? I mean, obviously raise awareness and tell people to treat people like human, and something that we've been doing for a long time as humans. But what are some steps that we can take or that our platforms can take to kind of crack down on this uncomfortability, thing, this thing?
This thing. It is talking about it and trying to not just call it out when you see it, but like try to be like, hey, that's really not cool.
Like
Could you
informative.
not? Right. And try to be like, that's uncomfortable. And, that's not okay. Things like that. And just, if you can, try and have that informative conversation. A lot of times you're not. But at least trying, you know, or, like if you're doing a cosplay at a convention, like calling that stuff out and going to authorities, things like that, or getting your friends to at least be like, yeah, no, like, we're not doing this kind of thing. There's unfortunately, like people are just going to do what people do sometimes and be kind of weird and whatever, or just be jerks because that's just what they do. But if we can just call it out and try, you know, not necessarily make them uncomfortable, but calling them out to make them like hopefully connect some synapses in their brain to be like,
Oh, maybe I'm like
maybe this
negatively
is,
impacting this
yeah, maybe
person.
that's not okay.
Maybe help them
No.
understand the impact of. I see. So, well, and that actually is a really beautiful segue. The next question was going to be, how can I and other members of the demographic who don't suffer from this sort of issue contribute? But it sounds like that's sort of also the answer to that question, which is kind of call that shit out when you see it, and help people. And I'm kind of paraphrasing yours just to make sure I understand what you're saying. You're saying call people out on that behavior when you see it, but more so help them, call them out in a way that helps them understand that they're negatively impacting another human emotional range and capabilities. That person, like, you're making that person feel like shit because you thought or whatever, right? Like, because I think that you're right that people are going to be people, um, and that there's not a lot that we can do about it. But I think that those people specifically, the ones who are, for instance, immediately attracted to, so much so that they're on that. I think that like their feelings are okay, but I think that they can have those feelings without making another person feel like shit, right? Like have that feeling to yourself in your head, and thanks for the in your head compliment, but I don't want to know about it, right? Like, um, because and I get it that that sounds a little pandery, like okay, you have to make space for everybody, but at the same time, like people can't control the first thing that comes to their times, right? You just can't. Like you talked about earlier, especially because, at least in America, a lot of things are really over sexualized, especially as you're growing up as a kid. So like for a lot, I can totally get that. Like for a lot of folks, that snap judgment is the first thing that comes out. But then keep your fucking Cheeto fingers off your keyboard, right? Like don't press enter comment here, and then if you do, for the love of God, don't press enter or send. Like if you need to go so far to express yourself as to write a comment, then don't send a comment, because and here's a saying I feel like I can't say enough as a human: your rights as a human stop at the beginning of another person, every time, every time. So I mean, and that lends itself to so many other different areas in life. But so I kind of got off on another tangent there, as I do. But so is that like a good recap of, hey, call it out when you see it, and help? So I guess a question. Then I saw you nod. Is that okay?
Yes.
Um, I it's weird because the camera's over here, but your face is over here. So like I'm trying to like look you in the face, but your face
Oh,
is over there, right? So and if I move the Discord to this screen over here, then it will be on the screen capture, and if I move the camera to there, then you guys can see that I haven't done my dishes in 3 days. So not happening. But
fair enough. Yeah.
so I think it's important to call out that again, folks can have those feelings. Just stop impacting other people with your feelings. Like you're okay for being immediately attracted to a human being. In fact, in some cases, like burlesque, for example, like that's the point. Like, cool. That thank you for being attracted, but stop impacting another person by leaving comments, by saying things. Right? Like just don't do that thing.
Right.
So, a question here, and this is a bit of a spicy question. This will be a good finale question before we find a conclusion. Like we've kind but a question that I have. I saw a meme the other day that said you can tell a person's a straight white guy because he's going to say, "Let me play devil's advocate," and then speak on something that he absolutely has nothing to say or. And the when I saw that, I was like, man, I gotta stop, like, because like I'm a person who likes to ask questions just to understand both sides of things. So I've been that person, but totally not gonna let me invalidate your point and everything that you're saying with this alternate question, but more of a help me understand both of these sides kind of thing. But it's gotten to the point where actually most of the time, at least on like forums or Facebook or Instagram or something, I don't ask those questions unless I know the person. because I don't want to even intent and impact is the short way to say that, right? My intent does not equal my impact, and I'm not going to contribute to the world in a way if it's going to come across in a different way. So, but here I feel like we're friends, and this is kind of a safe space, so I can kind of ask, um, what do you think? What do you think that there's any sort of lending to the topic? So let's talk about folks who do call this out when they see it, but it's not in a constructive way. It's a two-part question. In one part, what, if any, obligation do you think that a person has when they're calling out somebody for their behavior to also include an education of the impact of that person's behavior? And secondly, do you think that if a person doesn't come with the education, only the calling out part, do you think that that has an adverse effect, generally?
Okay, so we're gonna start with the first part. So I will say this: like you, me, no one is responsible for somebody else's learning. Like, full stop. However, if you feel that if to make your point or to be helpful is to include things, please by all means. But that doesn't guarantee they're going to read it, watch the video, or whatever, or even like listen. So it can go
True.
either way.
True.
I think making an effort to say, like, here's the research, here's some like tools for you, I think is always helpful.
Like, here's
In
a thread
case
to
they
pull.
want to.
Go unravel this fucking rug. Fuck off.
Right. I
That's,
think that's important, and I think calling those things out and being like, this is why I'm calling you out, like in like saying like, wow, that was a really like not nice thing to say. This is why I'm doing this. Those kind of things. That's important because it's giving someone something to like hold on to.
okay, sure. Like to walk
In a
away
way.
from with this experience.
Yeah.
Okay.
But at the same time, like, you don't want to overtax yourself by trying to throw out all these things when someone's just not listening.
Sure, sure. Like beating your head against a fucking brick wall, right?
Yeah.
So just to make sure I understand, you're saying that there is not necessarily an obligation to include an extensive research with calling somebody out on this behavior, but it would be helpful to include at least a smidgen of information that they could walk away with, that if they find themselves questioning, am I a piece of shit later in the bathtub, that they might be able to Google.
Hmm.
I see. Well, and I am a little bit more emboldened on my side. I agree with you. Let me go ahead and just state that just to get the anxiety out of the way. I agree with you. That's a really good way to tackle that. I'm a little more emboldened on the I think that if a person is going to outwardly express themselves enough to call out a person, I feel like there is at least that smidgen that we're talking about. Like, here, have a piece of knowledge and go fuck yourself. I think that that is a bit of the obligation. I think that that's the price to pay to get on the ride of calling the person out. I totally agree that a person's education is their own responsibility, and a person, but the phrase that always comes back to me, and just for context, I'm speaking of a place from a person who used to be this hateful piece of shit person, and I tell this to a lot of people like you who I've met in the last 10 years of my life. We're like, what, but then they're like, oh, but you're a white dude, like, so of course you have the capability of being that person. But like, I was growing up in the teenage years, in the preteen years, I was not a good person, and I was only offered a chance to be the person I am now by the folks who were willing to have that patience and that understanding, and willing to call me out and say, "Hey, here's like why you can't do that." Shout out to most of the wolves, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Hmm.
the one of the biggest reasons I was able to evolve, in my opinion, evolve, and in my opinion, be a person who can better contribute to the world in a more positive way. I had to unlearn some really shitty things, but I was only able to unlearn some shitty things by people having a little bit of patience with me, um, because you don't know what you don't know. And that's a really fun phrase to say, but I think that it needs to be elaborated on. That a person, like, for instance, there were times where people like lashed out at me for being an asshole. I'm like, I don't get it. This is the way things are. And then later I'd be sitting around thinking, wow, am I an asshole? And then I thought, well, how do you find information to that question? Now, on one hand, Google didn't really exist in the capacity it did then. But on the other hand, like I didn't know what questions to ask the next time I ran into a person who had that information. So I just
Mhm.
shut the fuck up and didn't learn for so long, right? It wasn't until folks started giving me a tidbit of knowledge and a tidbit of information to walk away with. So I guess that lends into the second part of the question because it kind of answers my side of that already, which is, do you think that there's an adverse effect to simply calling out people and walking away?
Well, I mean, yes, because if they're not going to realize, like you said, like you can't know what you don't know, like without help and things like that. Um, but I think for some people, like depending on what's happening, like a call out might at least like open a door in their
I
brain to
see
be
what you mean.
like why was I being an asshole, and maybe they'll like ask people around them or even try to like watch out for it.
Okay. Oh, and then like maybe learn from a situation if they see it happening somewhere else. Okay,
Right. And
that's a really good way to
that's
word
not
it.
always, clearly that's not always going to happen, but it's something that could happen.
Okay, so you're saying that if a person, you're saying that there can still be a positive effect from simply calling out a person and walking away, simply in that the experience in and of itself might create an awareness of the issue, a greater awareness of the issue out for.
I mean, that's the optimist in me because I would like
Sure.
that to be the case.
Okay. Well,
And
because
I
I
think
mean,
it could be.
okay, okay. I like that, and I agree. I've also seen, I mean, in real life, also the examples of the opposite, where somebody calls somebody else and walks away, and if anything, it like embolden and entrenches them, and like the
Oh,
next time they
absolutely.
see it, they're less likely to even, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
I think that we need to have like a big fucking flowchart that circles it back around to what can we do about it kind of thing, you know?
Hmm.
And I think that that's going to be one of the secrets of the universe that's probably harder to untangle than 90 minutes on a internet talk show in the corner of the internet.
Yes.
Right? But that's a really really good point. And I don't know, I'm also the ever optimist, right? That's like a gift and a curse. So I'm also um of the hope that even if a person calls a person out and walks away, that they're going to at least question themselves later at a point, because that's the experience that I had growing up, is that somebody did call me out, didn't give me any sort of elaboration or question, and then I did. I spiraled like with anxiety months after, like, oh my god, I'm a piece of shit, and then I found the answers, right? Like you find the answers. Um, well, that's really well said. Let's catch up on chat.
Yeah. I
I
was
think
like,
it's
Fellowship of Awesome said something really, really important to
okay.
this conversation.
Let's catch up here. It's Fellowship Wasp says, I think it also depends on who's doing the call out. Do you share a privileged identity with that person? Will the education potentially become an expense of your own safety? Good point. Good point. Something that I often actually don't have to think about that often, right? Like, that's a really good perspective. Even if you were not the person who's being harassed or hurt, your own identities might prevent. I see what you mean. So are you saying that it's like, are you saying that there's an added benefit to if you're the person who's bringing, let's just say, because you put call out in quotes, and I think that that was an intentional thing, the point that we can embolden, we can broaden that statement to be a little bit more inclusive of other situations as opposed to just conflict situations. So if you're going to bring awareness to a situation, is going to be my pivot for that one. You're going to bring awareness to a situation that's unfolding in front of you. Are you saying that it would be more impactful if you share an identity or several identity, specifically privileged identities, with with that person, so that they can kind of like, do you think that that creates a greater obligation of the person who shares that privileged identity to contribute to the general understanding of the situation, whatever the case may be? Obviously, the most common that we're talking about now is straight dudes talking down other straight dudes, right? Like, that's really where the problem lies. And I will say, anybody who spent any time on Grinder will know that it's not just straight dudes. It's just boys, right? Boys are just fucking boys. Gross. I hate the saying. And like, clearly what we're talking about now are going to be big steps to start working towards dismantling that, right? Holy shit. Tanner says it's an excellent point. Sometimes you can have good intentions, but you may not have the background to engage that. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay. Go even further. I think as a person with multiple privileged identities, it's my responsibility to do the call out and education if a person doing the harm shares why. Oh, okay. I see. Oh, well, and I'm glad I'm not the only person that feels that way, because when you sent your first message, just like I agree with you. And when I'm in situations like I'll give you an example. There was well, that's not a good example because it ended in a conflict, which is a fun story, but not the point. The point is I've been in situations where I felt more obligated to contribute to the understanding of the situation because I shared some of the privileged identities with the perpetrator, to use the buzzword here, right? It didn't go so well, but it was but the pool, the internal pool of, hey, you could do something about that, because I've had situations like where I'm just gonna say my other country friends were doing stupid shit and I felt the same pull and I said the same shit, but it was more of a place of trust and understanding because we already had the shared experiences and context and struggles like we talked about earlier. No person's struggles are invalid, but when you're talking with a person who shared the same struggles as you, it's a little bit easier to be relatable with that person. Then I did see a more more broad understanding of the general concepts of maybe I am negatively impacting another person. And I have seen the adoption of changes of a person's conversations, at least as it pertains to the way that they talk when they're around me. Which really does a tree. I know that a tree, at least a straight white tree, does still fall in the forest if no one's around to hear it, because they'll make sure that they put it on TikTok. But the point is, but at least as it pertains to me, folks have changed their language around me because they know that I'm going to be a person that calls it out. So either A, they're changing their life in positive ways by not impacting people that way anymore, or B, they're changing their life to where they're not going to bring it up around me, so I'm not like talking shit to them, but also they're still doing the thing out in the wild. I can't really do anything about it at that point, right? Like that's where a point where I think that personal responsibility really should just stop, because like I can't just keep tabs on all of the friends that I've had the don't call people mean names talk with, right? Like, and I can't really harbor responsibility for what they're gonna do even after we've had that talk, especially because if somebody's like, "Hey, he did this thing," I'm like, "Bro, we fucking talked about that, right?" Like, but then I can't really. So the personal responsibility for me at least kind of stops like right there, you know. And I didn't pair into a question. So I think that we've covered a lot of really important ground in terms of what we could do for these situations. So I think that it's probably a good time. We can probably like start to build a conclusion, and then we can kind of segue into talking about you and your content and some of the stuff I'm pretty excited for. So let's start to build a conclusion. So I think that acknowledgement of the problem is important, right? So for a short conclusion, we can say, and this is just an idea. Feel free to throw some ideas in there too. Bring awareness to the situation, and contribute where you best can. Like, how do we encapsulate? Hey, know that there's an issue specifically as it pertains to physicality in gaming through objectification. Um, we need to bring awareness to this, especially to the folks who are creating it, and maybe help them ask the right questions. How do we encapsulate?
I mean, it, kind of everything that we've already said.
Right.
It's like if you have a shared background of any type with whoever is having the issue, like whoever is causing the issue or whatever, it trying to use that to like start a conversation and calling it out and then having a further conversation is important. From a content creator's view, it's really hard to deal with that because sometimes you're not going to have that shared background.
Right.
Like for me, and if a white guy asking me for feet pictures, I'm not gonna. I mean, I have some shared
I mean, maybe,
rhetorical,
but how are you to know, right?
background,
Like, right.
right? But I think part of the content creator side is like trying to build a content creator community where you can all have this conversation and try to spread like, hi, like burlesque is not consent,
Right.
trying to get that out while other people are having the deeper conversations that we can't have with that one singular
I
person.
see. Okay. Well, and see, that's kind of like that's what this part of the show is my favorite, but it's also the most difficult in terms of how do we take the last 2 hours of conversation, hour and a half of conversation, and summarize it to be concise so that we can effectively communicate it in 142 characters or less, right?
Yeah.
How so I think that we're really I think we're really onto something there, and I think that combined with what you said and with what Nanners had said in the chat, I think that the first step is to figure out what the issue is, right? So recognize the problem. I want to say we'll say recognize the problem. Um, well, we're talking from the content creator's perspective, and it's harder from the content creator's perspective because, like we just talked about, like you just talked about specifically, you're not necessarily fully aware of what you share in common with perpetrator. Which, you know what, we're just going to solve the problem by calling everybody perpetrator. Nobody likes to be called perpetrator. Right. Thanks, Richard Nixon. So that's the third episode in a row that I've sarcastically razzed Richard Nixon for his blatant racism during his terms of office, and I'm very proud of the streak. So I think I'm gonna how many times I can sneak that into the so recognize the problem. So from a content creator's perspective, it's hard to say find a common ground, which was what was going to be the second thing I said, find a common ground, because you're not necessarily sure. But I think that it can still apply to content creators because, at least for me, as a person who shares many of the big privileges like male and white, I I feel like I can just create content and express the way that I feel about these situations. And I feel that people who identify with me and know my background and know the privileges that I share, that they share with me, that create that commonality. I'll let the viewer create the commonality, and I'll create the questions, right? But I don't know. But I feel like that's kind of the only way that you can handle it as somebody who's creating content, because you don't know who's on the other side of the screen. Which really, oh my God, Rumelia, you're a fucking genius, and I want to say that I love it when I have a guest that comes on the show, um, and they one sec, can't lose the idea. Ooh. I am gonna have a segment in the future. I don't know when. That is, who's behind the screen? Who's
Mm.
consuming your content?
Hmm.
Who's actually but to digress a little bit, we can't really control who's on the other side of the screen. So how do we as content creators still be helpful in the way that we're talking about right now, in terms of being aware of an issue and calling out an issue, while also creating the common ground? I think that's the only way that I've found to handle it so far, is to create content, generally speaking, as true to myself as I can be, and be open to questions or people saying, "Hey, maybe you should think about it this way." As which is one of my favorite things that we do in the show. Like, that's happened already in the chat, right? Like, here's some other perspectives on what's going on. That's what I love about the show, and so create content, be open to new ideas. So maybe we can create two conclusions, then, right? So we'll say, be aware of the problem. And then for the first one, we'll say find a common ground. And then we'll say um, grow together, maybe. I don't know. That feels a little cheesy. What do you think?
I mean, I'm all for cheesy.
Yeah. Okay. I'm glad that I'm not the only person who, like, I will say it does really feel like, at least in 2020, like romantic expressions of a person seem to be a bit stifled, right? I see a lot of folks, we have a lot of common friends who do the same thing, where when somebody's being cutesy or whatever, they go, yuck, right? Like, let's bring back cute romance, okay? I want to hear my high pitched ahs and stop it, right? Like, I miss stop it. So for the to come back, we'll say okay. So recognize the problem, identify common ground, grow together. You think that would be a good one?
I think so.
And then for content creators, we can say um, recognize the problem, um, authentically create content and be open to ideas, be open to questions, be
Yeah.
open. Oh, be open to change.
Yes.
Why am I not writing this down? What do you think? What do you and what? So do you? I think we should we relate those to physicality and gaming at all? Like, I mean, I think that as long as we know that the subject is physicality and gaming with these conclusions, kind of like we can probably leave it up to folks who see the conclusion after the fact to be like, oh, that's the conclusion to the talk, physicality and gaming, right? Do you think that that's too much to ask for?
I think it's fine. And I mean, because it also, you know, does lend itself to other things which can
True.
relate back to this. And so I think leaving it kind of broader is actually better in this case
Okay.
to kind of leave it open. But yeah, the title is Physicality in Gaming, and I think that's pretty clear in the conclusions as well.
Okay. So I have identify the problem, recognize common ground, grow together, or the broad statement. For content creators, I have identify the problem, create authentically. Oh, thanks, autocorrect. And be open to change.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? I think well said. And first of all, thank you for helping me kind of piece together this Frankenstein thoughts. It's both the upside and the downside of the show is I just throw wall spaghetti at the wall and just go over and pick up the noodles that stick. Right.
Perfect.
Awesome. What a good conclusion. So to kind of wrap up physicality and gaming, what we talked about is that there is clearly an issue in gaming, but in nerd world, generally speaking, that people are um, objectified due to their physicality, right? And that moreover, that there are folks who are not necessarily expressing their interest in these folks in healthy ways. And I think that we together as a nerd community can do a lot about that, specifically as it pertains to identifying the problem, recognizing common ground, and growing together. I feel like that's a pretty good encapsulation. Last, can you believe that it's already been more than 90 minutes? Like
I know. Wow.
flies
It flew
by.
by.
I have, this happens a lot. It happens to me too. Again, one of my favorite ways to spend my mornings. It, there's a whole other episode coming in the future about um, universe and existence and time and dimensions and shit, and how time goes by faster when you're having fun and slower when you're how that's like an actual observation of the universe. But that's for another time. The point is, thank you for being here for part of that. That was really fun. Let's transition a little bit if you are willing. I want to talk about Romelia Claymore. I want to talk
Mm-hmm.
about you. I'm going to change the topic here. And kind of what you do, why you do it, all the good stuff. So to jump into it, tell us about you and your content.
So me and my content, I do a lot of different stuff, as we've kind of figured out this entire time. Um, but so I don't even have a main one. Like it's all different. But we'll start with cocktails and claymores. So, which is where
I think that's
the claymore comes in. Cocktails and claymores I created um, as a way to meld um, making cocktails with being nerdy. So I
cool.
got the idea because one of my really good friends runs a D&D podcast that I am a Patreon for, and I voiced some characters in this thing.
What? Wait, I think I knew this. I think I have. Hold up. I think I have this bookmark because I was gonna look at it the other. Oh, I don't. I'm not signed into Firefox. Please remind me what the name is. It's the Dice Tower.
Dice Tower Theater. Yep.
Ah. Uh, let me get this up here in chat. CD. Do you mind if I?
Please do.
Okay. Consent is important.
It is.
All right. So this is what we're talking about here, right? I assume the Dice
Yep.
Tower Theater, and yeah. So this is the one that I have bookmarked on my work computer, which I probably shouldn't have said out loud. But okay, so tell us more about this. You said you voiced some characters for this show.
I do. Well,
Okay.
I've done, I think two or three now. So anyway, so I've done a couple of like small things just
Okay.
because I'm not like full crew for it.
Okay.
Um, but Dice Tower is a super cool D&D podcast run by a lot of my friends. Um, and it's a great time. The narrator is like has the best voice ever. Mikey is the best narrator I've ever heard in my life
Okay.
because he's got this beautiful deep voice. Yeah, Mike actually. He's wonderful.
Cool.
Uh, but yeah, and so I also like making cocktails, and so I was like, what if I like make nerdy drinks? And then my roommate Shannon had a friend that also does some similar stuff, and I was like, oh my god, this is brilliant.
Yeah.
This is just so good. Um, and so I started to do that.
Okay.
Um, and I'm a perfectionist when it comes to my drinks, and so like I don't have a ton of content there right now because I don't want to put out something that I know people aren't going to drink because that's
Ooh.
just silly.
Thank you for reminding me. I need to. Oh, please continue. I'm sorry.
Okay, no, you're good. Um, and so that's cocktails and claymores, and so it's going to be D&D themed drinks or like Lord of the Rings or like just nerdy
Okay.
drinks in general.
That's gonna be
Um,
good.
yeah, so that's that. And then we'll transition over to Lemon Drop Burlesque that we've talked about, which is my burlesque page.
Let's check your Google profile with that. Okay, it's 2 words, right?
Oh, yes, should be. B,
Burlesque.
yeah, Burlesque.
First try, baby. Sorry to throw you on the spot like this, but
Oh,
I'm
you're fine.
not
I don't
seeing.
even think I'm on Google, so
You're not. I'm not seeing your Insta, right? Yeah. But it is new,
it is. It is very
so
new.
that is to be expected. So let's do the Instagram. Oh fuck. There's underscores, right? There we go.
Yeah,
Yeah, this okay. The good news is it's the fucking first search on Instagram, so you're crushing it.
excellent.
So okay, so this is the second thing that you're talking about, right?
Yes,
Holy shit, you're skyrocketing up there in followers. Look at you go, bro.
I'm getting there.
Oh, I like your headphones. Wait, are the ears detachable?
No, so I have two pairs of headphones.
Oh,
Yeah,
neat. Okay.
yeah.
Fuck
So
yeah.
when I want to change them out, I can.
Okay. Nice. So tell us more about Lemon Drop Burlesque. Tell us more about the burlesque thing that you and your friends do. I must say I've also recently I was part of like the whole hey friends check out this new thing that we're doing. So I've seen it too, right? Like also a big fan. I think it's super cool. So is that a green Christmas sweater that Casey was wearing?
No, it's Lord of the Rings, but it is Packers colors,
It
which
is.
is even better.
It's a win-win for me if I'm honest. So
Right? Exactly. That's
Um,
what I said.
sorry. So anyway, tell us more about Lemon Drop Burlesque and why you do the thing that you do.
So this is actually brand new to me. I haven't even been in an official show yet because COVID is dumb.
The Christmas thing not count as a show? That was fun.
It's like a show, but it was just kind of our gift exchange, which was really fun.
Yeah, it
And
was
thank you
super.
for watching.
Y'all are like clearly, honestly, it was a pleasure to watch, and not in the weird, creepy white guy way, but in the way that it's really awesome to see like friends treat each other like that, right? Like y'all have a really beautiful like working and interpersonal relationship between that group of people, and it's pretty awesome to observe. Not to mention all of y'all are in your element, doing your thing, like expressing yourself to the world, which is a really beautiful thing to see people do, just generally speaking too. So yeah, it's of course I watched it. I think it's fun. I think good time. I'm sorry. Tell us more.
You're good. But yeah, so it's basically just doing burlesque, but cosplay.
Oh,
And
cool.
so we do, there's a bunch of characters that everyone has done before. There's been like for the Halloween show, there was Morticia Adams and her husband, whose name is gone, and things like that. And so in the future, I have a lot of ideas, but
Gomez.
my Gomez, thank you.
Sorry, I
Uh,
honestly could not think until we had figured that out
yep.
because
Nope, I
Um,
feel that.
so we're talking about it's creme burlesque, right?
Yes, creme brulee.
Creme. How do I get the? I'm just gonna do and hope that it gives me the burlesque. Oh motherfuckers. I need the E. I need the
Oh,
E.
scroll back up.
Balls. Hold on.
I
I
think it
fucked it
was
up. I fucked it up. I think you had oh, you know what? Got to get you a little linksy do in your Insta.
there.
Here
Oh
I
yeah, I didn't even do that.
have.
Whoops.
You're a monster.
I know I'm the worst.
Hold on, I got an idea. Let me go to the not private browser page part of Instagram here. So I do all of the shit on for the show on like a private thing. So it doesn't show like all the shit I'm googling. It just shows all the recommendations, all of that
Hmm.
good stuff. It does show um random things that I've clicked on Reddit, which is its own trap. But alas, I think we need a slash there.
Sure
Okay.
do.
Okay, and then we'll go ahead and hit a little tabby back thing. So yours.
There we
Okay,
go.
so this is the production company that's run by your friends, right?
Mhm.
That you've recently joined, Creme Burlesque. This is a
Yep.
Christmas episode that we were talking about. Let me give everybody links to theirs and yours instas.
Excellent.
That's cool. So tell us. So tell us why the thing, why burlesque? What calls to you about burlesque other than the really cool clothes that everybody gets to wear, bro? Like, oh man,
Right.
I wish I could pull off lingerie. I'd wear lingerie, and I mean, I get it. Some will say, hey, Bo, you can. So maybe I will try one day. But this is fucking
Do it.
cool, dude.
Yeah, so I really like the idea of mixing the cosplay aspect into it, so it's not just being pretty and
Sure.
putting on a show, but it's more
Cool.
than that. And I am big into cosplay and acting and things like that, and I think that helps me be a little bit more comfortable doing burlesque.
Nice.
But
Okay.
at the same time, it's helping me like love my body as it is
Oh, cool. Okay.
because it doesn't matter what my body looks like, the fact that I have stretch marks or scars or
Sure.
whatever, it doesn't matter. Like I can love myself and I can feel beautiful and pretty and still get to like cosplay and be stupid like I do. Like that's it's like everything I like in one.
Okay. Okay.
Plus I get to be out of my comfort zone doing the
Cool.
burlesque.
Right,
So,
right. Which, and they say that the most growth happens when you're the most uncomfortable. So, if you are breaking your own barriers and putting yourself out there in a way that you never thought that you would before, you're going to learn things that you might not have ever learned otherwise as it relates to kind of that phrase. So that's really cool. Honestly, that's really admirable. And to kind of relate it to what we were talking about earlier in physicality and gaming, it kind of takes the situations where you might have felt vulnerable or targeted in the past and really, like, excuse the really shitty and obvious low shelf pun here, but grab the bull by the horns and like tackle that motherfucker to the ground and tell him no, bitch. Like I own this. This is me. I will express it how I want, and you don't get to say. And if you want to appreciate, then do so fucking quietly, bitch. Right?
correct.
Like that's cool. That's really admirable. And you've also done like you Avstrom. You mentioned Avstrom.
Hmm.
That's like another LARP too, right? Catch me
Yeah.
up on Avstrom, and there's a lot of performance there too, right? I've seen like a couple of the YouTube performances, which is fucking cool. By the way, I feel like it's everything that's great about fanfic without none of the downsides, right? Which for me, which different person to person, right? The goods and bads to all things. But for me personally, it's reading because, and I'm reading things. I'm one of those people that like I'll get lost in thought mid sentence and then have to go back and reread the whole fucking paragraph. So like shows and podcasts all work better for me. So I've seen
Mhm.
some of the Avistrom stuff. So burlesque is a segue from a bit more of the performance based stuff that you picked up from Avastrom then?
Yeah. So I've been doing Avastrom since I was in my mid-teens.
Okay.
So I've been doing
Do you have like a page for your Avastrom stuff too, or
I do
what's a good
not.
page we can go to like learn about Avastrom?
Probably our Facebook, honestly,
Okay.
because our website's still being redone. Because we're going
Facebook.
through a lot of transitions right now.
Well, yeah, I imagine the world's changed quite a bit, huh?
Yeah.
The Academy
Um,
of Sorcery.
yes.
Okay. A lot of familiar faces.
Oh, yes. um, but this is so we call it like interactive theater. So it's slightly different than LARP because we actually have more of a theater style script.
It's like a
That,
structure, more of a structured thing. Okay.
but our patrons get to interact. They get to go to classes. So we'll have
Oh, I
charms
have
class,
seen that.
potions,
Wands
all.
classes, yes. Okay.
Mhm. And this year we actually put out a mini like podcast thing with all of our adventures since we couldn't meet in person this year.
Right.
Somewhere on there is a link to that. I know that there is, but um, yeah. So it's an acting outlet that is like my only acting outlet that I
Okay.
have.
Sure.
That I've been very blessed to be able to continue doing. So, and
Here's
it's
the.
all Harry Potter based,
It's all.
but
Oh, Harry. Okay.
we're our own school. And so Avastrom is set in the United States, in Colorado, Denver.
So Avastrom is the
Um,
name of the school.
yes,
Okay.
Avastrom Academy of Sorcery.
Okay. So it's. I'm sure you're probably tired of hearing this, but it's probably the. It's like the Hogwarts of the U.S. in this universe. Okay. Cool. What was Isn't there like There's one in like. There's like 8 of them, aren't there? Like schools in Harry Potter. What's
Something
canon?
like that.
What's canon in Avastrom? Is all of the schools canon
So
or everything canon?
no,
Oh,
so we don't necessarily recognize Ilvermorny or whatever it's called,
I don't know what
which
the
is the
fuck that
American
is.
school.
Oh, okay,
It's
cool.
the American school, but we created Avastrom first. But anyway, it
Ah,
doesn't matter.
okay. Well, but that's a good point, right? Like, hey, listen. But every other school?
Yes, so we refer to it as like Harry Potter is like history kind of,
Okay.
but we try to actually like not include a whole lot of like J.K. Rowling stuff in our stuff,
Is that
especially now.
because we hate her guts, or just because we're trying to avoid like copyright strikes, or D, all of the above?
Pretty much all of the above.
Okay.
um, because yeah, we don't want copyright. We don't want to get shut down because that would suck. Um, but also like we aren't in any way affiliated with J.K. Rowling at all.
She
And
couldn't. She couldn't sue me if I insulted her right now, right? What is your legal understanding? You want to? I'm going to take a risk, okay? I'm going to first start off by saying that Romelia Claymore has in no way part of what I'm about to say, but can join in if she'd like. J.K. Rowling's a cunt, dude. Like, can we just put that on the record? Like, look, hold up. Let me see. Are we full screen right now? Fuck you, J.K. Rowling. Just for the record. Just for the record.
yes, pretty much.
And if that gets me sued, I hope it's probably not going to get you sued because you're your own independent entity. But
Yeah.
man,
Hopefully you don't get sued.
I mean, honestly, at this point, especially as it pertains to J.K. Rowling, if I get sued or like, I actually thought about this the other day to kind of to digress a little bit to use that word a lot today. The I saw a mugshot of a person who had been arrested for hacking into his city's health department or like welfare or benefits department or whatever, and like giving everybody $2,500 on food stamps benefits that already had food stamps, and then approving every application in the system for food stamps, and then giving them $2,500.
Oh wow.
And then he got charged and like sent to prison for it. And I was like, honestly, there are some things that I would be proud to show on my fucking record. Like, you play MMOs where there's titles, right? Like, and
Mhm.
I would gladly wear that on my nameplate if we had nameplates in real life, which we will. Think about AR. AR goggles are going to give everybody nameplates, bro. You can display what your at tags are. People are going to look at you and just know where your Twitch is. It's
That'd be
gonna change the
awesome.
world. It's already here, bro. You'll see. 5 years tops. Anyway, the point is, before we get way too far off the path, um, um, well, it's gone. So fuck J.K. Rowling. Tell us more about Avastrom and how it pertains to like wizardry in the Americas. I have seen a couple of y'all's works. I've seen a couple of y'all's classes on the DL. Like I think I could be wrong because I see a lot of Harry Potter stuff. So I'm sorry if I am wrong. But I believe that I saw one that had to do with like wand making and like wand techniques and
I mean, probably.
or like shopping, or it was something about selecting one, and it was really fucking cool. If it wasn't this, then I'm sorry, but the point is that does lend to the fact that there's like a huge audience out there for folks who love the world that this has created, but don't necessarily feel satisfied with the content that exists in it out there. Well, and it's honestly a really cool expression of folks who do exactly that love that universe and that aren't satisfied with what's out there in terms of content, but take it even a step further in creating the vision of the world that they want to see, at least as it pertains to this world. And like, it's really awesome that there's so much effort put into, like, there's a podcast built about it. Like you were saying, we found the podcast, we linked it in chat. The There's so much passion put in by so many people that it's like it's bound to be fucking good.
Yeah. And it's been going for a long, long time, even before I started. And so it's just I have such pride for what I do with Avistrom. And like, that doesn't mean that I don't hate it sometimes, because, anytime you do a lot of work, you get burnt out, and then you're
Sure.
like, but I still love it.
That's how passions work, yeah.
But it's a great time, and we get to teach, magic, and get kids and adults alike just to be in a different world for a weekend,
Right. Just to, yeah.
and give them a sense of, like, you can always come home to Avistrom. You are always going to be accepted. You have a safe place, and we've built everything that we have now around our community and family of Avistrom,
Yeah.
And yeah, fuck J.K. Rowling and her stupid ass.
Welcome to the ship. I can't wait to get sued with you. It's gonna be such a
Yep.
good adventure. You know what? I'm just gonna settle. I'm gonna settle because if she wants to sue me for all my money, she could fucking have it. There's no money, right? Like, have my dryer lint, J.K. Rowling, you dumb bitch, right? But at the same time, if I'm like, I'm gonna put that on my fucking resume, right? That's definitely gonna be one of those situations where I'm like, no publicity, bad publicity. Because if anything, being the person that gets sued by J.K. Rowling for saying "fuck you, you dumb cunt" would be pretty cool. And like, if I had a choice of what to be famous for, if I were gonna be famous, that would be on the list of things I'd want to be.
Like
Uh,
it.
Cool. Well, this is really awesome. That's really fucking cool. And the fact that it has been going for so long is really a testament to like how it is, just quality work by a lot of people, like you said, a lot of people who are really passionate about it. And it's really cool that even though there can be sometimes downsides, like you said, um, that y'all persevere through it to make sure. Like a beautiful example is the pivot to the digital format once COVID hit, right? A lot of the world stopped, but the magic of Avistrom didn't. That's really fucking cool. Did I say that right, Avistrom? Okay, that'd be embarrassing if not, because that was like a cool saying. Well, cool. That's fucking awesome. Thank you for sharing that with me. So, question. So it's 1:01, and I know I only asked you for 2 hours of your time. So if you got shit to do, that's totally cool. But I also wanted to give you like 30 minutes, 45 minutes, however long you wanted to talk about you and your brand. So if you want to stay on longer and keep talking about you, I would love that. I welcome that. I have time set aside for it. But if you have to go, we totally understand. We only ask for 2 hours of your time. So
Unfortunately, I do have stuff going on, so I do
cool.
have to leave,
Sure,
which is
sure.
unfortunate.
That's okay. We hit a lot of really important stuff, and I'm gonna once again go ahead and link your Instagram in the chatsy doozle here. You mentioned that you had links on there to all of your other stuff, and we've posted a lot of links here in chat too. So if y'all need links to any of Romelia's other content, please feel free to follow those links. Make sure to drop her a follow. A lot of love. It was really awesome of you to come onto the show. I really do appreciate it. It
Thank you for
makes
having me.
Of course, of course. And I wanted to reach out to all my friends and family first and be like, hey, come do this thing with me before I reach out to all these random strangers on the internet. So, because y'all are really helping me, right? Like, build a format, and I get to work on my filler words and breathing and remembering what the point is and all of those things. But I get to do it with the people that I love and that I haven't gotten to talk to that much this year because of all of the events being canceled. So, it's a really great way to catch up. Thank you. And thanks to your household if they're still watching. It's awesome that y'all jumped on here to support Romelia and to contribute to chat and help us with perspectives and understanding. So thank you. Yeah, that's really awesome of you. Can you hear me? Am I muted?
Nope, you're good.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, I'm going to kick you out of here then. I'm going to go ahead and hang up the call. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the Sunday. Thanks again.
You as well. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Wait. Okay. Okay, bye. Well, cool, everybody. That is going to be the show today. It never ceases to blow my mind exactly how fast 2 hours goes by every Sunday morning. That's pretty cool. Dragon Slayer said we can't get sued freedom of speech. I mean, freedom of speech is not freedom from repercussions, right? You still have to deal with the consequences. You're not freedom of speech means you're not going to get criminal actions for your words. It doesn't mean that somebody can't sue you for like defamation. So yeah, you should Google that, bro. It's time to educate and elevate freedom of speech and what it does and doesn't protect you from. But everybody, thank you so much for being in chat here. Nanners, great of you to be here. It's wonderful to talk to you. Fellowship of Awesome, again, it's great to have you all in here. It means a lot that y'all stopped by. Bruff was here. Rad was here. The crew showed up. It was really lovely to spend the afternoon with you. Iron Fletcher, there you are. So good. Thank you for being here, buddy. I appreciate all of y'all's continued support. Every week you show up. Every week you make me feel like the prettiest belle at the ball. So I definitely appreciate it. We're going to go ahead and I guess just wind down a little bit, right? We're going to go ahead and put on some tunes here. Some DMCA-free tunes, obviously. I think that it was pretty cool. We got a lot out of today's episode in terms of physicality and gaming. It was really awesome to have some helpful perspectives that are not my perspective to provide some insight on some issues from a standpoint that we don't get to see that often. So that's pretty cool. I love the conclusion that we walked away with, which again, to remind everybody, hold on, I have to pull up the notes. To remind everybody was identify the problem, recognize common ground, and grow together. I think that is pretty cool in terms of ideas to walk away from with that conversation. That's going to be really helpful for me to remember when I'm in situations where somebody's be sipping on that dumb bitch juice. So, cool. Well, it's a lovely way to spend a Sunday afternoon with y'all. Please make sure to come back for next week's episode, which is going to be pretty cool. It's going to be with our good buddy Kim Shoppable, friend of mine from the last city that I lived in. She started a business to help folks who are trying to stay as safe as they can during this COVID thing with their shopping needs. You know, a lot of folks still need to get shit even though they can't leave their house, and a lot of folks don't have options outside of the big grocery lines to deliver, so she created that solution. Come watch us talk about that, but we're also going to talk about how America is not necessarily very accommodating for folks who are disabled. There's going to be a lot of folks who think, well, yeah, there's plenty of accommodations, they put ramps and stairs, right? But we're going to talk about how there are other issues. And we're going to bring a little bit of awareness to situations that might not have a lot of awareness. And we're going to talk about what we can do about it. We're basically going to talk about how fucking hard it is to be disabled, at least in our country, because that's where I live, right? That's what I can speak on. Make sure you join us next week. It's going to be really fun. Otherwise, I think that is going to be it. Make sure y'all check out that spreadsheet. Look for topics. Iron Fletcher, I got your message this morning. I just haven't read it fully yet because I woke up a little late. It's a whole other thing. But I see you. I'll fill you out on that. Everybody else, thank you for being here that lovely Sunday. Make sure that you drop a follow on all those socials. Should make a command that drops all the socials. Don't I have a link tree? I think I have a link tree. Make sure you all follow on these socials. A lot of folks don't really understand how much their support means on these platforms. So let me just go ahead and state that when you follow your friends' socials, especially friends who are trying to do their own shit like this, it makes a big difference for us. Not only does it help with engagement, but it also helps us validate our need for positive attention from our friends and family, just to blindly state that. So it's pretty cool in more than one way. I felt a little guilt trippy. I wasn't trying to do that. I was just trying to tell everybody how it makes me feel. It's probably a bit of a longer discussion on a different episode of why those two things were so similar. Anyway, we're going to get out of here before we continue to incriminate ourselves any further. I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of the Sunday. Thank you for stopping by. Last week we talked about how funny it would be if streams just cut out, like after the stream, as like an outro, because we didn't